It wasn't the birthday surprise Josh Fall was expecting.
I looked out into the horizon and I saw about 6 or 7 orbs, I guess. And they were moving around in formation. They were disappearing. They were reappearing at times.
He was treated to a light show courtesy of these unidentified objects in the sky late Thursday night.
It looked peculiar. It was more bright than an ordinary star.
From cyberspace to outer space, the number of UFO sightings in Canada is soaring tenfold over the past 25 years. The majority of those flying objects eventually get identified, but a few are never explained. And that's enough to keep some sky watchers wondering if just one sighting could be real.
It was around 4:30, still plenty of daylight even in the winter, and these things just started arriving. Some of them had like little double trails behind them, but what's different from planes is they'd come in from different directions and they'd stop, and then the trails would almost catch up with them.
We're stepping up to keep our border strong and secure by deploying new helicopters, drones, and surveillance tools, by adding new scanners and sniffer dog teams to stop and seize fentanyl, by cracking down on money laundering that's funding cross-border crime.
By deploying new helicopters, drones, and surveillance tools.
This multinational event, hosted by U.S. Army Central Command and the Saudi Arabian Armed Forces, focused on countering uncrewed aerial systems, CUAS, in a realistic and challenging environment.
The late great astrophysicist Stephen Hawking believed with more than 100 billion stars in our galaxy, the odds are pretty good that aliens exist. And he's not alone. Every day, people across Canada report seeing a UFO. And while most can be identified, as CTV's Janet Dirks reports, some things just can't be explained.
Hello and welcome to the second part of a special investigative report from Deceptive Reality. My name is Nick on the Canadian side.
And on the good old US of A side, my name is Bert. What an exciting little intro. I didn't know nothing about Canadian land here, Nick. I mean, good night.
Yeah. I think it's just like anything else. We get stuff a little later from you, but it's really ramped up here and it's still ongoing. I think yours is too, actually.
Oh yeah, ours is nonstop. The media is just not covering it the same way. For anyone that doesn't know, we covered this last week and we covered the US side. So if you are curious about the US side, you're coming to us. Maybe you're a Canadian friend of ours watching this Canadian episode. After this episode's over, go watch the US version. And in fact, Nick and I's even talked about possibly doing a third episode on some things that we've kind of uncovered in the last week. Things are happening. And it's speeding up.
Even up to yesterday, when I was finishing up this new intro, because things are coming in pretty steady. People are sending me things. It's still ongoing, and I've learned stuff that I didn't know in time to present it today.
Right. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, is how quickly.
Yeah. It's when talking with people around here, it's interesting, but it's also... And I think we've talked about it before, that maybe you don't feel about it the same way as I do, but there's a sort of a sense of unease in the air. And I find that exciting, and a lot of people here do.
Yeah. For me, maybe not so much excitement, more of the question of, okay, well, what's truly going on? Like there's got to be some rhyme or reason for the things that we're seeing and how people are trying to adapt to what they're seeing. Because right now, almost everything in the US, they say it's just commercial grade drones.
Right.
What you're seeing is stars. It's Starlink. And what I find amazing is on a lot of these websites that info's on, there's more and more people that's talking about all these extra things. And it makes me wonder, are these paid actors to come in and try to push the narrative away from what it really is?
No, I hadn't thought about that, but it aligns good with what I'm seeing, where it would lead me to believe that a number of things are going on, not just one thing, but that could be disinformation that's causing that.
Correct.
You know, because a lot of the stuff I see, like when we were looking at your episode, you had some footage and some stuff I wouldn't say is a drone necessarily.
Yeah.
But then there's some footage that's really far down that is clearly a drone. And I'm like, I don't know if these two things are the same. Is this part of the disinformation thing? Are they flying drones low to say, oh, that's what's up there?
I think that is a combination of two things. I think as long as we've had mysteries,
right,
there's people that's always going to fake content just because they just think it's interesting, right? Like there's going to be those people that, I mean, look at UFOs, right? Like crop circles. We talked about crop circles. We got an entire episode on crop circles.
Right.
But in that, episode that we did, we also covered the fact that there was a lot of people that faked it.
Right. Well, I mean, there was also one guy who was totally legit that they made an absolute fool out of.
Yes.
Which that episode's worth it to listen to that alone.
Right.
Because that's the kind of thing that's a big tactic. They want to make people feel like fools for wondering about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The more you can make someone sound stupid,
right,
the less they're going to try to. It's like the age-old thought process of when you're in school. If someone shuts you down, if a bully shuts you down enough time, then you just don't venture into that part. You stay away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you like in school, if you're in class and people make fun of you for something, you're probably not going to talk about that again, And
exactly.
Well, all the way back to, what was it? Betty and Barney Hill.
Yep.
People just ridiculed them.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been an ongoing tactic of people ridiculing each other.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why a lot of people don't report things.
Correct. They don't want to. And, it's funny because on my podcast, we talk about obviously paranormal more from like the ghost side.
Right.
And, one of the big conversations that we have over there is a lot of people don't want to tell their story.
Right.
Because of the ridicule that they get. And I think that happens on anything, whether it's a ghost story, a UFO story, you saw Bigfoot, you saw the Loch Ness Monster. Like people are just like, I don't want to be seen as the idiot.
Right. Why do we ridicule people like that? What's the origin of that? What do we get from gatekeeping who can talk about interesting topics?
I think that there's two different methodologies behind it. The first one is when I hear something that I know is fake.
Right.
It's hard for me to keep my mouth closed. And the reason for that is I want the person to know, hey, I know you're lying.
Right.
And no one else is going to believe you either. So just stop.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is a lot of people are quote unquote experts.
Right.
So if they don't believe it, then it's not the case. I mean, I had a great example. I had two people. We just had a psychic medium on my podcast last week.
Right.
I had two comments from two experts that informed me that there's no such thing as a psychic medium.
Right. That's a heavy-handed comment to make.
Correct.
There's no such thing as insert topic here. That's difficult.
Correct. And that's my whole point. No one can know, right? That's why it's paranormal. Right. Like even what we're talking about now in drones could potentially be something that's paranormal. It's something that science can't explain.
Right. Well, I mean, if it were like paranormal in or I guess supernatural.
Yeah.
Like we're not really getting into that because I don't think it's that. I don't think you think it's that. Most people don't. But I mean, it could be. I can't come out here and say supernatural things that look like UFOs don't exist. In fact, I've got a video in the drive of someone who is absolutely convinced that these are angelic beings.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not buying that, but I'm not going to make fun of them for it. I don't think that's what it is, but.
Well, I mean, we would have egg on our face if it was.
Right. Yeah. I'd feel real silly if that turned out to be the case. I mean, right now, I feel pretty safe about my position.
Oh, yeah. Me too. I think we're pretty much dead in line with most things. There is some more questionable things that I've seen here lately where I go, might be that? Which is why Nick and I are talking about possibly doing a third episode. I think that there might be additional information we could look at. And again, at the end of the day, none of us know. We're not specialists in this. We're just talking about what's happening out there in the world of these drones currently. So,
yeah, and we present things. We're not saying this is this video, because I've captured a good, I think, 20 videos.
Yeah.
That I've been able to put in the drive, and I don't know if we're going to use them, or some of them are not, others. But I was just grabbing what I could.
Yeah,
before they were taken down. But I'm not going to say on any of them that this is real. This is not real. This is fake. This is not fake. This is just someone's experience that we're presenting to you to decide.
Right. And that's the key. This is just a big conversation. And this is why we started this podcast, was to start that dialect and conversation about, hey, what information do you have that maybe I don't have?
Right.
And then in the comments down below, everyone can have these conversations. And I mean, let's be honest, we're probably not going to get the truth from the government or anybody else. We got to kind of figure this out on our own.
Yeah. I mean, I trust information from governments just as much, no more than I trust it from people talking out on the street.
Oh yeah,
that's for sure.
For sure.
And sometimes less, maybe.
I would say less.
Yeah.
I would say less.
Yeah. I think on the street, sometimes it's an education problem, but in the government, it's do we want people to know this kind of thing? How will this affect our bottom lines?
Well,
that kind of thing.
And think about it. We've also talked about in other podcasts that the government themselves have provided misinformation in the past.
Oh, yeah. And there's evidence of that. That's a known thing.
Right. So we don't even know what they could be giving misinformation on. So,
yeah. Another thing we've covered pretty extensively is how long that our militaries have technology before it becomes available to the consumer.
Correct.
Like for GPS, for example, there were laws about how accurate ours could be up until just a few years ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, this stuff we're talking about today, and 5 years from now, we might be like, oh, that's everyday stuff. Like there's 40 drones in any direction I look in 10 years from now.
Right.
And they might have battery lives that last a whole year or something. Maybe they're completely solar powered, or maybe they draw energy from, that Tesla energy that's in the air.
Correct. Well, and I think next week's episode, we're going to cover a little bit more of kind of the history of some things, as well as some recent events that's happened, to give you guys. And something that I did find interesting when we jump into this topic, I think our last week's YouTube video has been held back a little bit by YouTube machine. So
it could be.
Yeah, I expected much bigger results, and our watch time is extremely good on that video for who watched it. And our click-through rate is probably one of the highest ever. So if people see it, they're clicking it.
Right. But they're just not seeing it.
They're not showing it.
Well, that kind of brings me to one of the main differences between the occurrences in the US and Canada is I subtitled this episode The Canadian Cover-Up, because we've had an almost imperceptible media response where you guys are getting stories all the time.
Yeah.
We do have people reporting it because they're keeping statistics on that, but it's not being covered.
That's very wild to me.
Yeah. So the thing is, I don't understand how they're doing that in a lot of cases, because I think I had mentioned briefly during the last episode, but I'll bring it up again now with some additional stuff I learned, is that right after it happened, I was checking TikTok and I was getting sent TikToks and Instagrams and YouTube shorts from all these different accounts. And people saying, hey, did you see this? Hey, did you see this? In fact, one of the girls that I interviewed for this, that was with me when we saw it, and I'll get to that a little later, she's been sending me like every couple hours, like almost one an hour.
Wow.
When it first started. Now what's been happening is a lot of the videos were taken down.
Yeah.
So I was able to, when I started to realize it happening, I was able to clip like 20, I think. But there was like 40, 50, 60 originally. But I kept getting that message, this video does not exist. And then this account doesn't exist.
Oh, wow.
And here's the new thing. I know some people who run YouTube channels who their video was taken down by a copyright complaint from an account that had the video, but the account's deleted. How do you delete your account and launch a copyright claim?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
So there's something weird about that. Additionally, as much as I hate this platform, Facebook, we have a couple groups that I'm in. I don't post in them. I don't want to get caught up in that stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't, if you pass a car on the highway and they don't like it, or if you walk the wrong direction on the side of the road, or if you do anything that catches someone's eye, it's on there instantly. This was completely unreported on those Facebook groups for days. In fact, people towns over didn't even know this was going on. In fact, I asked my brother, who's into this more than I am.
Yeah.
He was like, I hadn't heard a thing, and he's only less than an hour away.
That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that it's almost like they're making it non-existent.
Right.
It's like, okay, if it goes away, no one will talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's absurd.
Yeah, it is absurd. And there was like that. So that first interview was the only one that was specifically about the drones.
Yeah.
The other two ones from CTV, I think it was in Global News, they just happened to run stories about UFOs in general during that time period. And then a couple days later, that's when that Trudeau quote was put on the internet there about, it's just like, oh, we're going to strengthen our air borders and stuff and do drones and all this stuff. What a weird time to mention that.
Very weird.
And then, of course, this conference with how to shoot down drones in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, for mainstream news and somehow control over social media, it's just strangled.
Well, I know this is why, to a degree, I'm thankful that Deceptive Realities technically ran here in the States, because you guys had that huge amendment to what Canadian YouTubers have to put in your guys' videos. To even have a video up. You guys have to basically praise or provide some type of acknowledgement to Canada in a positive light, which I find that crazy. That sounds almost like a communist country to a degree.
Well, we've got some things that are communist, like, or socialist, really.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say communist. We're far from communist, but we're very close to socialist in a lot of ways. But I never thought that would really be a big deal. But recently I've seen a couple of notices that this is not being shown in Canada for X reasons. But periodically we get that kind of thing. Like, I think I noticed a couple weeks ago, and maybe today, you're wearing a Ren and Stimpy shirt.
You best believe.
So there was a huge battle in Canada about that appearing on our music station, because our media is has always been controlled by a broadcast standards commission, and they said it was completely inappropriate for a cartoon to show up on a music station. So that got pulled from here.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, so there's a lot more control here over what we can know. Like, you guys do absolutely have more freedom on that, and maybe that's a part of why you're getting more coverage. But it's really quiet here. A lot of the things I've seen posted are from people I know who post anonymously.
Well, I know that there was a lot of YouTube content creators. This was last year. I think it was last year.
Right.
But they were very concerned about these amendments that was coming into Canada for their content creation. They were so scared that they wasn't going to quite hit that threshold of what they needed to do. So I don't know. It's very scary to me when we look at the drone stuff, and like you said, it's like a trickle effect for you guys. Now it's less spoke about on like news reports now here in the US, but like a lot of our social media, we still have it all over the place. So you know, that's just, I think I heard someone say it the other day. Nobody trusts news networks anymore. Now it's all about, okay, who out in the public's going to tell the truth? And that's the direction most people's going, which is why some of you probably jumped into this video. Now, one big thing that I found was of the views that we had last week, most came from searches. So people searching for it.
I did a lot of YouTube searches to come up with material, and I had a devil of a time finding really much of anything. Even the New Jersey ones were not that as many videos as I would have expected.
No. The bulk of the info I get is from Facebook groups.
Right.
That's probably where and Reddit. Reddit and Facebook are probably the two places that I'm getting most of my information from right now.
Yeah. For videos and sightings and stuff, they seem to stay up longer on TikTok.
Yeah.
Of all things. Which our governments would not have any control over that.
Correct.
So that's probably why, but they are getting to them on there as well somehow.
Right.
So
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
I'm super curious. The people that you interviewed, was it one person, two people? How many did you?
Two people.
So to the two people
I talked to directly.
What's their thoughts on this?
Well, one of them is very interested, and they really haven't got any theories on why no one's talking about it, because they were going on and posting anonymously.
Yeah.
And that's why the voice has changed. And I did talk to them again about going on camera, and they're like, yeah, I'd consider doing that, but they kept putting it off and putting it off. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to get to do this, but I don't blame them in the slightest.
No, of course not.
Especially here. Now, the second one, they do not think this is good. They think that the government is actually possibly disappearing some people, which I don't know if I necessarily believe that kind of thing, but she's pretty certain that's going on, because she feels like if someone's account was taken away, you normally hear them about it through a alternate account complaining about it, but you don't get any of that either. The accounts are just gone. Now, A plus B don't always equal C, so that doesn't mean that that's happening. There's a lot of things that can be done. But she's got an interesting opinion, and it's a quote that we might include in a short later. It's not going to be in the main thing probably, but she says she hopes it's UFOs, because her opinion is if it's drones, they're mostly only used like those kind of drones to take people out. And she thinks it's either we're going to be attacked, which is a possibility that a lot of people are thinking, or it's extraterrestrial.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Yeah. I thought that myself when I was out on my walk one night. I'm like, that thing could vaporize me. I've seen videos of what they do in like Russia and the Ukraine.
Well, you know, what's funny is we was talking about this when we finished recording the podcast last week, and what happened as soon as we got done.
Yeah.
My entire internet shut down.
Right away.
And on top of that, my cell phone service was acting weird.
Yeah, you lost it all at one point.
Lost it all. Now, usually I'll lose home service. You know, it doesn't happen often, but like if that was it, I'd been like, whatever. But the fact that my cell phone was kicking from 5G to 4G was very odd. Like my cell phone never goes to 4G. Like if I look right now, I guarantee it's sitting in 5G. Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, I'm in 5G right now. So,
yeah, mine very rarely leaves that unless I go out into the real boonies.
Yeah, I have to go like really deep. In fact, mine is 5G UC, which is considered.
I've never even seen that before.
Yeah, that's like the top. Like I can get, if mine says just 5G, I got okay coverage. But when it says that UC after, I'm like, okay, yeah, we're real good. Like we're running, we're moving.
You're connected to the drones.
Yeah, we're connected to them drones, baby.
Yeah, right.
Getting some info.
Unidentified connection. That's what UC must be.
That's what it is. That's facts. Beam me up, Scotty.
I know, right? But I mean, there's been times where either of our internets have disconnected, but we're back in like seconds, maybe a couple minutes tops. And I was just like, should I wait or should
And here's the thing, I couldn't even message you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my 4G, 5G kept going off and it's like, unable to connect to servers. And I'm like, what is going on? It's like they found me, boys.
Right.
Going down.
I mean, that was probably, we'll say probably a coincidence.
Probably a coincidence.
But maybe it's not. Maybe you were doing stuff you shouldn't have been doing, like talking about drones on the internet.
You need to ask your friend. Ask her if I'm in trouble.
I know. I can tell you already she thinks that you're in trouble. She was pretty doom and gloom about it. In fact, the voice changer that I use doesn't sound too far from her regular voice. So she might have been, just kidding, by the way, before I say this, she might have been like one of those emo kids back in the day, or like a Wednesday Addams or something. You know?
That's funny.
But sorry, go ahead.
Did she watch our first episode?
I don't know. I haven't talked to her about that. I probably should.
I'd be curious if she saw it and what her thoughts is from the US side, because like you said, it's different.
Right.
I'm curious what her thought process is seeing the US stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to contact her and specifically tell her about it.
Yeah.
Because I was still hoping to get them on camera.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
It was my goal because I had like a week to do it. I kept bringing it up and they're like, yeah, I think I'd be okay with that sometime.
Right.
And I'm like, well, sometime's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. I got 4 days.
we like the first person we work in the same office, we could shoot off to one of the conference rooms.
Yep.
Do it up there. No problem. But no, didn't happen. But so maybe somewhere in there we can include the full interview with the first one at least. Yeah. Because I was actually there. I was one of the people that she went and got because she went out for a smoke. And then she come back in and she's like telling people to come outside because this is like 4:30, the middle of the day. Everyone in town must have saw these things because they were just shooting in from the sky. They had little trails that would catch up with them, and they were stopping right in formation. And this is miles out there. We shouldn't be able to see those. In fact, you can't see Starlink during the day, according to the internet, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be able to see most satellites during the day. You definitely couldn't see stars. I can verify that. It was a blue sky.
Yeah.
But these were miles out. We could see them and they were stopping just in a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 up to like, I counted 17, but they counted 20 after I left because I couldn't just stand there all day, unfortunately.
Dang.
And they were there all night, maybe even the next night because fog rolled in and we couldn't see anything. But I guarantee anywhere in our town, people could have seen them, but no one was posting about it.
That's so crazy to me.
I know. One thing I thought about, though, when we were out there, because no one was taking a picture at that particular time, I could have caught a picture easy. Mm-hmm. And I, of all people, should have thought of it. Because do you remember when we were talking about the Shag Harbor incident?
Yeah.
One of our big things was like, why weren't people taking pictures? And you know, we were like technology and stuff, can't see in the dark well with cameras back then. Honestly, in the midst of these things, doesn't even cross your mind.
No, because you're trying to figure it out.
I had it in my hand, not even in my pocket. I had my phone in my hand and I didn't take a picture because my mind was blown. I'd never seen anything like it.
That's the thing though. We say it, people say it all the time. Well, if you saw it, you would take a picture of it. In fact, we talk about a lot with ghosts. Now think about it. A ghost you see 1 second is completely gone.
Right. You don't even have time for that. I had time for this.
Right.
But there's a disconnect. Like our minds, if they see something so out of the ordinary, it's almost like they unhook and we put all our power to processing what's going on.
Right.
And that's sort of what was happening there for at least 10 of us.
Right.
And I'm assuming the rest of the town, because people look out into the ocean all the time.
Correct.
There's people who live on a part that's closer to where they were. They would have saw them.
And you know what people's going to say if you tell them later, well, why didn't you take a photo?
Right.
And you're going to go, well, you know, I just had some. Okay, then it's fake. It's all fake. We don't believe you.
Yeah. And then the girl I work with posted anonymously to these groups. Mm-hmm. And it never got a like. It never got a comment. like people on these groups are pretty sassy. Like if they see something they don't agree with, they're usually like, oh, you're a dumb
conspiracy
A word and stuff like that. And like they'll really curse you out. There's no rules on these groups. Yeah. No comments, no likes, nothing.
Those groups must be from the US because you Canadians are too nice for that.
Oh no, we're nasty to each other. We just try not to show you guys that.
Man, that's crazy to me.
But yeah, which is the weirdest thing, that we're so worried about. We're so worried about ridicule and stuff, but we've had some huge incidents that we've covered some of them. Like our Roswell, the Shag Harbor incident, our government even listed that as a UFO.
Yeah.
If you remember that. We have the Falcon Lake incident, which was in '67, which incidentally is the same year as the Shag Harbor incident.
Oh, wow.
And that's one where people got close enough that they actually got burns.
Oh, yeah.
From the UFO.
It was like grid marks or something, right?
Yeah. But the one you're thinking of is the Rendlesham Forest one, which is a little more famous.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. But that happened here too. Like our defense and aviation agencies have tracked unknown aerial objects for years. Like this isn't any new news to us. The Maritimes in particular, we have like a whole history with these sightings. My dad, who doesn't believe in anything, swears up and down he saw a UFO. I've had experiences that I've talked to you about on our shows.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think, again, there's certain things that we just have to lean back and we have to say, this is legit. And I know it's legit because I experienced it myself.
Right.
And no one can tell me otherwise. You know, it's hard sometimes to do that. But I think that there's enough pushback to where they're like, I'm tired of people assuming that this is a lie. You know, you can believe it or you don't have to. It's totally your choice.
Right.
But this is what happened to me. And people like your dad, or like in your case, that's your line in the sand.
Right.
And I know a few people like that too. Like, like I say, there's a relative of mine that swears up and down he saw a Bigfoot. Swears up and down. Now, I've as a kid, I subscribed to it, but now as an older adult, I'm like, if they were there, they don't exist anymore.
Right. I don't know. I think they could be around. Who knows, though?
They could be. It could be. It's just not something that I would necessarily believe in.
Right. I don't think whether they exist or not is ever going to affect me in the way that UFOs, aliens, UAPs, drones affect me.
Right. And there's so much misinformation on these things from our own people. Like who knows what the truth is? Like one of the things that I find the most fascinating when it comes to UFOs, period, is the people that go like, there's 20 different species and all of them's living here on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, who knows? Because you look at these UFOs, like I think we mentioned it last week. These drones remind us a lot of one of our favorite movies.
Right.
And what was the job of that thing, Nick?
The drone in in Interstellar, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
What were they doing at that time? Was that a military one or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because it was just dying at the time they found it.
Right. But basically it was, it's like everything when we think UFOs, right? We either think they're super friendly or they're super nasty.
Right.
And, I think that's kind of the deal. If we think that it's something that's nefarious, they love to use that word with these drones, something nefarious.
Yeah. Right.
If it's something nefarious, they're here to exterminate us, to take us out.
Right. And I think one thing you've mentioned before is that's our projecting ourselves onto other beings.
Right. I forget where I heard
which
that.
Isn't fair.
Somebody said that a long time ago and I picked it up and I go, you know what? It makes a lot of sense what they're saying. Like we assume the worst because we are the worst.
Right. Exactly. And that's why the two different lines of thinking that most people are thinking, one scares me and one don't.
Right.
And if it's us, it scares me.
Right.
If it's out there, if it's a alien race, it doesn't scare me.
Right. Yet.
So
until they blow up
Yet.
that first building like they did in Independence Day.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they're blowing up buildings, I doubt it's going to be the fish plant in Yarmouth or the, Rod Grand Hotel or anything like that. So I'll have a little time to prepare myself.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The thing that I find fascinating when we talk about UFOs, typically in the U.S., there's UFO cases all over the place. In fact, we did a podcast here in Ohio where we covered a UFO story pretty extensively.
Right.
There's another UFO story that we might eventually go into on the podcast, which was saw by helicopter pilots also here in Ohio. So super fascinating way to look at it, but it's always over land. Well, this is the first time that now we're saying what's coming from the sea. It's coming from, off of the waters of New Jersey. And especially for you guys are all water, basically.
Oh, yeah. You can't go very far before hitting water. In fact, they usually say if you are somewhere in Nova Scotia and you need to find your way, there's only one direction you can go that you won't hit ocean, and you will eventually. You'll just get tired before you get there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But if you think about it, like if these things are coming from the water, let's just play with the concept that it could be a UFO, alien, something extraterrestrial.
And this is kind of an unfair thing that we do, is we usually have an awesome discussion about this before and after the podcast where we've already talked this out.
Right, exactly. Sorry, folks. And that's another thing. We talked about this last podcast too. 2025, we're changing up a little bit.
Right.
In that we're going away from the story narratives that we used to do. And we're going more so into just talking about things all the way through. And it's more conducive. But in that, you guys will still see videos play. We've not done any kind of videos on that last episode or this one because we don't want there to be confusion between what's real and what's fake.
Yeah, this is like a news broadcast more than anything.
Correct. Yeah, this is going to be more on the news of what other people are seeing. So we want to make sure that that is as accurately portrayed as we can. But when we talk about if this is a UFO, extraterrestrial, whatever it could be, we have had the theory that maybe they are underwater.
Right.
And that while they're underwater, perhaps there's even civilizations underwater and they come up when they need to, or if there's something they need to do. One of the things that I heard recently this week that came out of some of our different, I guess you could say, content points based on this, was they talked about there was an agency that had advanced drones and they just wanted to get them up in the air and see what these things look like. And much like what we talked about last week, again, when they did this, the lights on the drone, quote unquote drone, turned off, and then it went so fast they couldn't even catch up with it.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing, as well as I do, if you work a drone, there's only so much signal that you can get. So that level, that's going to be more than likely an unmanned is what we would assume.
Right. Like pre-programmed in a lot of cases.
Correct. Yeah. Especially if they're locking on a coordinates like what you talked about.
Yeah. Like the grid system, that would be hard to get someone to fly those all with a joystick.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, have you seen those, not to get too far off topic, but have you seen those Chinese drones that do all those things? Like they just had one for the beginning of the new year.
Yeah, with the dragon in the portal and all that. Impressive, absolutely impressive.
To assume that those were drones blows my mind. And I forget how many drones they said. It was like thousands.
Oh yeah.
Or tens of thousands.
They've got a lot. They did a drone show in a nearby town here not long ago, but it wasn't anything like that. It was like at tops probably 20 drones or something, but still impressive.
Yeah, like if we was to do something like that here, it'd be like, hey, Bailey, hey, get your buddy Walter. He's got one of them there drone, right? See if y'all can get your lights to blink at the same time. Look, it's two circles.
Right, right.
Like that would be here for most of us. So, we're not doing anything that spectacular, but that just goes to show that China's capable of doing those kind of fancy, I mean, if they can make a freaking dragon in a portal,
yeah.
I mean, to think that they couldn't do a grid thing. But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If someone was to shoot a drone up into those, you know, where the dragon and stuff is, they're not going to run from that drone. It's already pre-programmed, so it's already running.
They can't, in fact, at that point.
So it's like, if we know that's the case,
mm-hmm.
then whatever this is either highly manned to the point to where it can switch on a dime, or these are manned, or some type of entity is inside whatever this is.
Yeah. Now, if they were pre-programmed, we've got the technology now that we could pre-program a number of responses as well if we had to.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's an option as well. Just to theorize on what it could be. It could be like if something comes close to you, emit this pulse and power it down,
which we've seen.
We've seen that a number of times.
Correct. Yeah. We talked about that last week. In fact, there was a couple of drones that went up and then they lost full power. They went up with full power.
Exactly. And we also talked about that there's got to be some kind of thought behind it, because they were flying right next to those planes and they weren't interfering with those, thank goodness.
Right. Yeah. Because, I mean, things could go south very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. With there being that many drones up in the air, we haven't heard of any crashes.
No. And I mean, they can be high up enough that if they crashed, it would be noticeable.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It'd be noticeable. And imagine if these drones that have been sticking up there for days, what kind of power cell they might have. And I'm sure you've saw videos of like even cell phone batteries, what happens to them if they get punctured or something.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's violent.
Oh, yeah, it's horrendous. Not only that, but, you know, it's funny because last week we also talked about the heat signature and how they wasn't giving off a heat signature.
Yeah.
You know,
that blew my mind.
Oh,
really.
yeah. I mean, think about it. Just if there's a camera alone, they would need a camera to be able to transmit something if they're up in the air like that. And I think you and I talked. For the stuff that we have coming up, I bought one of those Insta360 X4s.
Right.
For anyone that doesn't know, this is like an action cam. And for funsies, I was running it because you and I talked about the heating, how they get relatively hot, you know?
Yeah, an earlier version of the one you've got was shutting down on me when I was in Toronto because it was like 41 degrees. That's Canadian degrees, though.
Yeah,
so.
That's that doggone Celsius.
Yeah, so.
I found it impressive that I turned it on.
Yeah.
I put in 8K, which is the highest that it will record. 8K 30 frames per second. And it didn't overheat, but it got so hot in my hand, I'm like, wow, this thing will probably, it'll kick off.
It was on its way.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. These cameras are meant to sort of capture brief moments, kind of.
Right.
Like you wouldn't want to, I mean, in the winter or in the fall, it's probably fine.
Right.
But typically, like the one I've got set up, I tap a little button on it and it will do a recording and I tap it to stop. But they're only expecting me to do like 5 minutes or something like that.
Right.
Action cams, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that's the thing. If you think about how much heat those things give off, and you're telling me that these drones are up in the air with these brushless motors or whatever it could be, it's not giving any heat signature. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that sounds insane to me.
Yeah, for sure. Because all the technologies, right? I mean, when just a freaking camera is getting
which
warm
has
in my
got
hand.
not any moving parts.
No, nothing.
It's just resistance from the electricity going through it.
Yeah, it's just energy. You know, one thing that also blew my mind is they require so much energy just for that camera. You can't take the battery out and just use straight power. It won't work.
No, none of them have that option that I'm aware of.
So supposedly the X2, you could get away with it.
Okay.
You took the battery pack out and then you hook it up to USB-C and it powers it enough.
Okay.
But it has to be continuous power. But the X4, you have to have the battery in.
Right.
Because I'm like, well, shoot, I'll just get rid of the battery. That's what's overheating. But it's those chips in there that's processing so much.
Yeah. What a lot of these smaller ones are doing now is they come with cases that have an additional battery.
Yeah.
So you can return them to the case for a little bit and get longer shoots out of them. But all the action cams, as far as I'm aware, and I've got stuff from the GoPro system, the DJI, I forget what that third one is. The Insta. Yeah, I've got one from each of these, and they're all short use kind of things.
Yeah. I will say the Insta360, the Ace Pro, I didn't have a lot of overheating with that. That stayed relatively cool. Now, I will say that I only recorded at 4K. I didn't go to 8K.
Right.
And I think 8K is really where it's pushing the envelope.
Yeah. Because a lot of them don't do that.
Yeah.
4K is the tops on 2 out of 3 of mine, I think.
Yeah. See, the Ace Pro for me is 8K and the X4 is 8K.
Yeah. Here's the pro tip, though, if anyone's in the mind to shop for these action cams. The Insta360 series, which you just bought, yours is a 360 camera.
Yes.
The Insta360 Go-To is not, even though it's got 360 in the name. So beware for that.
Yeah. Well, even the Ace Pro, that's not a 360 either.
Yeah.
That's
Do
just
they still
one
call
lens.
it 360?
Yeah,
Or?
Insta360 Ace Pro.
See, I don't like that. I already had a 360 camera, so I wasn't looking for that.
Yeah.
But I don't like that they've named it that way.
I don't either. And that's even what their app says. Their app says Insta360 for everything.
Right.
So,
but
I don't know. I don't know why they came up with that idea, but
yeah, I would like to see more people getting these.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they're not going to catch drones because you didn't, Nick.
Well, that's a Nick problem. That's not a technology problem.
Well, you know what I thought about doing is, and I was going to do it that night, is those Insta360s has the star lapse function.
Oh, nice.
So like with the 360, you could put it out and it will capture the patterns, the patterns of the stars. Well, it's going to follow a solid pattern. But if you've got one that's weaving and ducking and moving all over the place.
Oh, you should be able to identify that real
correct.
Easy.
Correct.
Now, is it going to get lost in the noise of the other ones, though? I guess that's what you'll have to figure out.
I mean, I don't think so, because if you think about it, it's just capturing the brightest part of the dark sky.
Right.
So if it's moving, as long as it's not a fast movement.
Yeah. I'm just thinking a lot of those, they start to streak the stars.
Yeah.
But you should be able to see something if it's going this way and
then deviating. Yeah.
Right.
Because a star will never deviate. It's going to be based on that travel plan of the Earth's rotation. So,
you know what I'd like to get more data from is, I don't know about where you are, but we've got like NORAD and radar stations and all that kind of stuff. They've got to be picking up something.
Oh, yeah.
But that data is just, as far as I know, not available.
Yeah, they're not going to give that up
to anyone. Like, what is that publicly available at all?
I think parts of it is, but not the whole thing.
The Santa tracker.
Santa tracker's 100%.
Yeah. That's reliable.
Because we got to know when Santa's coming.
Right.
There is some additional information. Even some of the weather pattern stuff will come from that stuff. But think about it. There's agencies that work within that realm that we don't see any of their stuff. HARP is a great example of that.
Yeah. That, I don't know if I'm just remembering this wrong, but HARP for a long time was something that was supposedly a rumor. Like, people didn't think that existed.
Correct.
That conspiracy nuts we're talking about. And now it's common knowledge that does exist.
But that's the thing. That goes back to our original conversation. It's all misinformation. If you can say, man, these people's crazy, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nuts. You know, don't even listen to that person. They're completely left to center. Like, that's not going to be something that would ever be something we would build, and we would never build it for that reason. And then 15 years later, they're like, oh yeah, no, that was there. I mean, but it wasn't what the conspiracy theorist people said.
Yeah. Like, it's in the modern era, people can go back and check what people were saying, because this is all archived. Unfortunately, if they're going to release that information, the governments can go back and look at the archives as well and make sure that that's taken care of.
Correct.
Because there's huge swaths of even the Internet Archive website that nothing's there, that gets wiped all the time. And it's probably for storage purposes, but
for sure,
it could easily be a government saying, yeah, we're going to say that this thing that didn't exist exists. So we want to make sure that the people who were saying it didn't exist before are wiped off of there.
Well, think about it.
Right.
NASA's a prime example.
Mm-hmm.
We go to the moon. We got all this footage. They want to piece it all together. Oh, yeah, no, we recorded over all of it by mistake and this and that.
Yeah.
Funny how that happens.
What a mistake. Imagine it is a mistake, though.
Oh, for sure.
And you were the dude who recorded over it with like episodes of Seinfeld or something. Yeah, like, or no matter what you recorded over of it, can you imagine the trouble you'd be in?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But that's why a lot of people who's conspiracy theorists go, okay, well, clearly there's something there. Why else would they record over it? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, you know what doesn't make sense about that as well? The average person knows to make backups.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't know to make backups then?
Correct.
They never had anything happen to any other media before?
Well, that's where it all came into recognition.
Right.
There was a group of people that was going to basically, back then, upscale all the material, because the standard, what we see is not necessarily what's on the film. There's more that's cut out.
Right.
Even our podcast is a great example. I record in 4K, but I scale it down to 1080, and sometimes I cut into that. So you're technically not seeing the full image. If you saw the full image, like, here's a great example. Nick's looking at me right now. He can see all my mixing boards, but when everything comes to be, you probably, the viewer at home, will not see my mixing boards because I'll cut into it. That's
kind of a shame, because that's fun to look at. Like, that's like when I look over, like 75% of the time I'm looking at you, but 25% of the time I'm watching all the bleeps and bloops over there.
That's what I would do. That's why I'm cut it out. I don't want people to not pay attention to me, Nick.
I'm not 100% sure that you're not in a UFO.
I might be. Listen,
you know,
I hit a couple buttons, I'll blast off, Nick. Beam me up, Scotty.
That's right. Right out of the ocean.
Exactly. The ocean here in Ohio.
Yeah, that's right.
The Ohio Ocean.
Maybe there's a pond or something. I don't know what it's like there.
Hey, we got the Ohio River.
There's got to be something that's keeping that corn going.
That's right, man. That corn, listen, it's fierce too. It's a fierce corn.
Speaking of earlier Interstellar, do you know the director of that planted 500 acres of corn just for the movie? Yeah, that wasn't there normally.
What?
Yeah. And he didn't want it to be CGI.
Wow, that's crazy to me.
It is, but on the other hand, can make a lot of money off corn too. So they probably made their investment back.
Yeah, they probably, they made some money off of it.
Yeah.
That's insane to me, though. It always impresses me when they decide not to go the path of CGI. And it's like, wow, you really did all that. Like there was an entire city in one film, I forgot what the name of the film was, that they built an entire city so they could smash a boat into it for one scene of a movie that was less than 20 seconds. I'm like, what?
I appreciate that, though, because, you know, you and I both love computers. We love technology.
Yeah.
But I don't think CGI in most cases is very good for anything other than superhero movies. Like,
I would agree.
For fixing stuff up, but to fabricate something out of thin air, I don't like seeing that.
Well, here's something that's mind-blowing before we go back to drones.
Right.
Avatar, the newest one, the water scenes, those were all CGI.
Oh, yeah. Well, that whole movie's CGI.
Yeah. But, no, not all of it.
No?
No, there was some stuff that they recorded and then they did some layering using computer.
Oh, okay.
But all the water artifacting was all 100% CGI. A lot of people thought that it was actual recorded water that they then transposed into the film. They said they had an entire server that was filled with the particulates for the water
Wow.
That was the size of an entire room, and the scene was like 20 seconds long. Could you imagine?
Crazy.
That's how much computing power.
That's one technology we won't be investing in ourselves, I guess.
Sorry, deceptive reality, that is not going to be what you guys should expect.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say we've scaled down a little bit, Nick, this year, and I think it's for the better, not necessarily for the worse.
Yeah. Well, season 3 is going to be more about getting to the meat of things and a lot less repetition of things.
Correct.
And I like that.
Yeah. Because think about it. If you guys are getting an hour-and-a-half podcast, but we're just repeating 30 minutes of it
that you just saw in a video,
you didn't really watch an hour and a half of something. You watched an hour of something that we talked about twice.
Right. Plus, in this format, we've both researched this topic.
Correct.
And we're both going to be researching all topics going forward.
Correct.
So my dumbass questions aren't going to be as bad as they were before, because I'm going to know what Bert's talking about and be able to have hopefully an intelligent conversation about it.
Correct. And we're putting all of our stories. So I was showing Nick tonight, all of our stories is going into one spot. So we'll have the availability of knowing what the other one's thinking. Now, here's the cool thing. We're also going to start having case numbers on these, and you'll be able to look at it and know, okay, well, this case is X amount of however many they've done going forward. So if you see there's like a coding, but the last number is 31, that means we've done 31 episodes of something.
Right.
So just a fun way of looking at it. I don't know. We'll see, but this is going to be the year that's going to be more meat and potatoes, the best way to put it.
That's right. That's right. And it's actually significantly easier for us to do too.
Yeah,
which is good.
it's good because, sometimes if we are trying to explain concepts and ideas, and it's easy for us to go on tangents if we don't have something listed out, versus now we're going to be more on the cuff.
Well, we just went on a short one, but normally we'd have gone on 20 by now.
Yeah, if more than that.
Exactly.
More than 20.
Yeah. But getting back to it, from the people I've talked to here, and my own thoughts, really, we're just looking at two things. We're looking at man-made possibilities or extraterrestrials. So some things I wrote down that I have listed is under man-made, simply foreign surveillance or espionage drones from China, Russia, maybe some other entities, but China and Russia is probably like the two top contenders, although we absolutely don't know what North Korea has at any given time.
I mean, they have issues with the rockets, so I don't think they're smart enough for drones. No offense.
Probably not. Well, I mean, they haven't got access to a lot of the resources other people have.
That's correct. Calls Rocket Man.
Yeah.
I don't want to get his copyright struck, and I sing so well.
I know, so close to the original. One more brief tangent is, if you're posting things about sightings you've seen of UFOs, ghosts, anything like that, please, for the love of all that's holy, stop putting copyright popular music on these videos, because they're unusable by us if we want to present them to people.
But that might be why they're doing it, Nick.
Maybe they don't want us to do it. Maybe.
There was rumors that came out that stores started increasing the volume of the speakers playing copyright music so that content creators would not come in.
That's very possible, because a couple places downtown here have been doing that as long as I've been alive, but they choose music that kids particularly don't like.
Yeah.
And they blast it onto the streets at night so they don't hang around.
Oh, that's smart.
So they've been doing that a while.
Gotta get rid of them doggone kids.
That's right. Let the kids be. They need places to go to. But so foreign surveillance or espionage drones, I've got some pros and some positive and negatives about that. I don't think it's these, because they showed up in the middle of the day and they made a big show of being here. They hung around for days. They've got lights on them all over the place. That makes it hard to spy. If they didn't have the lights, if they didn't show up in the daylight, I think they'd do a lot better spying.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
On the other hand, they don't seem to be doing anything. Although there was one story up towards Halifax, which is the nearest city to here, that they saw one traveling, which looked like it had a long box attached to it. But I've got no information whatsoever about what that could be or what even people speculated that could be. And that's just what, like, a couple people saying that they could know each other. So I'm 50-50 on the surveillance drones. The second one I had written down is advanced military technology being tested or being deployed covertly. So it could be our military or another military launching these, playing around with them, not really saying much about it because they don't want to have to answer questions about it.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit more on that one. Plus, it's kind of a show of force if these are showing up. Like, if you're a foreign power and you're bringing it onto the most powerful countries in the world, or well, you guys anyway, we're just backup. But and just sort of lining up like troops used to line up on a battlefield, and we can't do anything about it. That's a pretty big show of force.
Huge show of force, yeah.
And then there's private or corporate drone activity misidentified as something more mysterious. I think that's completely impossible just by the amount of them that are around.
So many.
Yeah, so that's what I had for man-made. For man-made ones, is there anything that you were thinking that I didn't cover there?
No, we kind of covered some of those last week also.
Yeah.
You know, this is where I leaned. I think it's possible. I think anything's possible. And next week we're going to be covering a story that hit the waves here pretty hard last week. In fact, someone kind of tipped me off to part of it in our comments in last week's video. Like, hey, I just saw this video with these people and you should check it out. Now, I had already heard bits and pieces, but I did not know about that specific interview.
Right.
So there was information that I was tipped off on, and it kind of leans into some of what we're talking about with the man-made possibilities.
Right.
So we're going to cover more of that in depth next week. And this is the thing, like, I like this subject, but like, I don't want to spend forever on it, but I feel like so much extra information's coming out that it's like, goodness, we didn't cover it in week 1. Now we're not covering week 2, and it's too big to cover in week 2. So now we got to go to week 3. You know,
right? Maybe beyond that, we'll have like in the beginning, we'll be like an update to the drone situation, and then we can move on to our regular topic,
right?
Because I'm sure people don't want to hear us cover this every week, so
for sure.
But 3 is a good number.
Yeah, 3 is definitely.
We got to get that stuff in.
Yeah, 3 is, even though it covers the drones, there's a lot more that goes into it than just the drone.
Right.
And I think we'll kind of cover all of that. So drones will be a segment within that story.
Yeah. I feel like we shouldn't even be calling them drones. I'm not leaning towards drones.
No. That's
I think anytime you see something that's clearly a drone, I think that's a misdirection. That's a red herring.
Correct.
In my opinion.
For sure. So if it's not man-made, then what direction you going, Nick? This is my favorite. Right here, I
love UFOs, and I want to say that it's that. I want to think there's something coming from the oceans. That's my brother's topic that he really likes, is there's some kind of thing under the ocean or in the earth, even, because he likes that hollow earth kind of thing. And he thinks that they come up from the oceans or from the hollow earth. And what we talked about again before the episode is that all throughout history, when we do things like nuclear testing, they arrive immediately.
Yeah.
And that's a lot easier. Like, we theorized before that they can bend space and time or travel through dimensions. And but sometimes a simpler explanation is better. They're just in the oceans.
Right.
They just come out of there. They can arrive anywhere in seconds.
Correct. Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And that's what I'm leaning towards. And I don't feel like they'd have the need to really be too secretive.
Right. I would agree.
And something that's a little bit of a more wild, far out there theory of mine is that something's happening. Some nation, probably Canada or the US, is doing something Or actually, I shouldn't just say Canada and the US, because both of us have seen a lot of stories from overseas as well where this is happening too. We just haven't got firsthand experience on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if there's something going on that if it is extraterrestrial, they're showing up to say, hey, watch it. What you're doing is not right. What you're doing is dangerous. Could there be something behind that?
I say they say, E.T. phone home. Later, Bert, put a bright finger on the. Yeah. Oh, I can almost do it.
You can do that easy.
I can almost do that with my spotlight already coming to my head. Look at that. But E.T. phone home. I think that's what it is. I think they're here.
Yeah.
The rest of it sounds good, but I'm still leaning heavier UFO, aliens, extraterrestrial. I think they're here.
Oh yeah.
Only because that's what I want.
Yeah. Well, yeah, me too. But do you have any theories about why they're suddenly making themselves known? That's what I'm interested in.
I mean, this is probably people's not going to like this answer.
Mm-hmm.
My theory is they're showing, hey, y'all are getting a little rambunctious.
This is kind of what I'm thinking.
And, you're a little rambunctious. You're maybe doing some things. You understand it's kind of like, a great example. When one of my kids do something and my wife yells at him and says, hey, you better stop it. Hey, y'all better stop. Hey, kids, stop. But when dad says it, dad's home. Dad's home. Dad's like, hey, what y'all been doing down there, huh? You understand? Dad's home.
You're the UFO.
I'm kind of UFO, Nick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's someone who said it originally. I don't know who it was, but a lot of people have said this, that the only thing that could ever bring about world peace is if there were extraterrestrials for us to hate more.
Yeah.
Like if we thought there was a threat from beyond the stars, our wars would seem petty, which they are, but we'd realize it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And which, there's so many different stories of these aliens that supposedly have been here, or, there's a history and we came from aliens. Like it's all fascinating.
Yeah.
Like Billy Carson is probably one of the biggest guys that subscribe to the Emerald tablets and how, we are really coming from these aliens and we're just genetically built. But of course, he just got slaughtered in a freaking, what do they call that? A debate.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, there goes that entire hypothesis. Sorry, all the Billy Carson fans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to throw him a little bone, anyone can get destroyed in a debate on a bad day, but I don't know what was said. He might have been irrevocably destroyed.
So a religious guy came in and pretty much destroyed his entire argument, and he conceded to everything. He goes, okay, well, you're the expert, so clearly that's probably right, and then moved on to the next thing. It's like,
okay.
Well, that didn't look good. It's gotten so bad. Billy Carson is trying to get those videos down.
That's a good sign that you've messed up.
He went to the producer's house at 2:30 in the morning to serve him papers.
Really?
Yeah, that's generally a pretty bad sign.
I don't feel like he can stop that. I don't think there's any legal route for him to take.
He's saying that it was all under duress. Basically, he didn't know what he's getting into, and though the guys now came out and was like, he knew everything. Like I told him who was coming on. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's really bad right now. And I used to be a huge Billy Carson fan because I'm like, it's a great story. I'm not saying it's real, but it's a great story.
Well, I mean, I can love a story and not believe it.
Right. Yeah.
Also.
Correct.
Or I can have a twinkling of belief and,
right.
And that doesn't bother me. Like we've told some stories on here that I don't necessarily believe. I've even told them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I like them nonetheless.
Listen, it's our job to tell the story. It's up to the listeners and the viewers to determine if they're legit or not. And I am super curious where most of our viewers are leaning into this. Do they think it's extraterrestrial? Do they think it's a man-made? Do they think it's foreign entities? That's really we're in an echo chamber of just me and you and Nick, and we're kind of falling in the same spot. I want to hear someone go, y'all are crazy. It's not doggone extraterrestrial. It's Bill.
Right. If you are going to answer that, though, I want to hear not only what you think it is, but why now?
Right. Yeah.
And what's the purpose?
Well, we discussed last week, too. It wasn't necessarily just now. Like this happened, 4 years ago, 5 years ago also.
Yeah. Yeah. It just seems orchestrated now that they're trying to cover such a large area.
Correct. Yeah. Now that's a little different than last time. Yeah.
And if you are in another country or on another continent and that's been happening where you live, we'd like to hear that about that too. Like, we don't have enough information to make our own episode about it, but I'm sure all the other listeners would like to hear that.
I found out actually when I was researching for next week's podcast, this is happening a lot in the UK also.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard some of that as well.
I was kind of surprised by that because they started issuing no-fly zones before anybody else.
I wonder why. Did theirs start earlier than yours did?
Yes.
Interesting.
Or at least there was acknowledgement of it sooner.
Yeah. Now, I don't hear much from countries beyond our own, really.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't, like, if I'm just listening to the regular news or listening to people who do watch the news a lot around here, I'm only going to hear what's going on in the US and Canada or in relation to what we are doing over there.
Right.
That's all I'll hear. So if their media's covering it, I'm not going to know. I don't watch BBC News.
Yeah, I don't either. But here's the thing, though. If it is happening in the UK, they're surrounded by water too.
Right. I think everyone I've heard in other countries, and it's a lot more isolated than ours, but they all do seem to be on coastal kind of areas.
UK, Canada, New Jersey, California.
I thought there was some Australia as well.
There could be. I don't know enough about that. I couldn't tell you.
I mean, that could just be some new deadly flying, glowing poisonous snake over there.
Flying freaking kangaroo, scorpion / spider kind of deal. Y'all got some dangerous animals out there. I'm good on that. I don't.
Yeah. I talk regularly to a couple of our co-workers that live in Australia, and I always started the conversation with, like, what's the snake report? Like, have you seen any snakes?
Well, it's funny because I saw a video last week, not to get off topic, but we are talking about Australia, and there's a woman complaining about this scary thing that she had happen. And while she's doing it, there's this huge spider behind her crawling across a wall that had zero effect on her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're so used to it now.
I'm like, yeah, screw that noise. I'm good on that. If I see a spider like that crawling through my yard, I'm shooting it with a gun.
Right. Me too. But I mean, would they even notice if they had drones there? Would they even care?
Here's the thing. I would be curious because Australia's government's a little bit different. I would be curious how they handle it because the UK's tight-lipped. So's the US, Canada. Right. Australia's a little bit more ambitious with what they put out there.
They seem real open about a lot of stuff.
They are very open, yeah.
Yeah, I guess out of Britain, we wouldn't expect to hear much of anything at all because they don't even cover a lot of, their regular events, I guess.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. There's something to Australia. I would assume we'd have way more information, but again, I'm not searching for it either. So
right, that's the thing. That's why I'd like to see some of that in the comments. But maybe I'll look into it too, just to see.
Our Australian friends, tell us what's going on. We want to know.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, I did come across a website that was allowing people to plot out where they saw the drones.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I know that I saw it, like, it wasn't working super good. I don't know if it was busy or if it just wasn't well made, but there were a lot of them plotted out along coastal regions, and some places I wouldn't have really expected to see some.
Well, that's the thing. All the states it's been in is coastal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio's deep from obviously the ocean and stuff like that. So that one's a little unusual.
Mm-hmm.
But we got military installments that it was all over. So it's like,
right.
Where does that fall in? I don't know.
Yeah. I've not, we don't know a lot about our military installation. So, I mean, as I demonstrated on the last episode, that I forgot that there were ones capable of shooting down a UFO last time.
Right.
We had that there. So I haven't heard a lot about it going over our really private areas. I know all commercial drones in Canada have to have this programming in it that will take them out of restricted space. But we're not talking about commercial drones.
Well, you could know a lot more about your military installments, and you may very well hear soon, Nick.
Yeah, I could hear, but I do know some ex-military people, so I can grill them some more.
Well, I was just thinking if you guys would just allow yourselves to be the 51st state, you could.
That's why we have those installations.
I say that in jest. We love our Canadian neighbors.
Yeah, there's benefits to being separate as well. So
yeah, y'all have moose. We don't want those. Y'all can keep those. We don't. We don't want them.
You are worried about
mooses.
the wrong thing, Bert. It's the Canadian geese you don't want.
That's what you say. I'm not scared of a goose.
They can break your leg with a flick of their wing.
Man, I tell you what, Nick, I could break their face with the slap of my big toe. Take them out.
Well, this will be a battle if they ever head down that way.
I've already fought geese here, Nick. I'm not scared of geese.
What? Oh, man, they're bad.
They're bad here. Like, they try to scare people off.
Yeah.
But listen,
they'll punch you.
You just come out like you own the place, Nick. You don't have no problem. You just come out. Listen, just pretend like you're an older male, alpha male, right? You come out, just fake it till you make it. Come out and go, come on, goose, come on, listen, I'm kick that tail, son.
Lower my head and hiss at them too.
Like that.
What is it? Someone called it a cobra chicken.
It kind of is like a cobra chicken. That is kind of true. Yeah. But your mooses are more scary. Y'all can keep those. I'm good on those.
Yeah. Maybe the drones will take care of them.
It's possible.
So I mean, most of what we went through here is how it's being covered up here. And I did write one closing thought. And the more I think about it, I'm just going to answer it.
Okay.
It says, will Canada provide more transparency in the future? No.
I don't think
That's
so. That's
simply not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen.
I think that they're very tight-lipped on things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for them, there's no benefit in providing it.
Yeah. And I'm not going to give out my opinions one way or another on our incoming political parties, but traditionally conservatives are less transparent about this kind of stuff. So it's unlikely we'll seeing any slacking of laws or slacking of information laws in the coming years. So I just think we'll never hear a statement from them.
Yeah.
From any government in Canada.
See, for us, I think there'll be more transparency this next, enacted political party. That,
right.
The thing with America is the moment that you tell us we can't have something, we go,
right.
That's some bull spit. Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting it, whether you want to give it to us or not. We're taking it now. America, we're taking it. We got the flag out. That's just the moment you tell us we can't have something. That's when we want it.
We're more passive.
You guys are
unlike our geese.
You kind of are. Listen, just like them geese, man, they'll break your leg.
Yeah, we
Don't get it twisted.
We have ways of breaking legs too. But no, but that's the answer. We're not going to hear more about it here other than our social media. So the only way, if you're in Canada right now, you have to be looking this up every day like I am. And when you see something, don't think you can come back to it later. Copy it then, save it then. If you're unsure how to save videos, install OBS and you can record it right on your own screen.
And OBS is free.
OBS is free. Don't trust YouTube downloader sites. They install viruses on your computer. This isn't a conspiracy. This is fact. I work in cybersecurity. But install OBS, save anything you can, take screenshots using the Clipper tool or any other tool, and just archive this stuff, because if you want to know about it, don't rely on our news stations or government to tell you. We're all going to have to be watching it and chronicling it ourselves.
And that's the thing. As a public, we need to do a better job of not being scared to say what's going on.
And to stop ridiculing those who aren't afraid.
I think those will be there because I feel like there is a large portion of those that are paid actors.
Yeah, a lot of them. There's a lot of trolls out there too that just like saying nasty things to people.
For sure.
But I don't want to hear anyone saying Skylink. I just don't want to hear that.
I get so sick of seeing it.
Like, that's the first thing people thought about. So if you thought about it, they thought about it.
Right.
You know, and some people are going to be wrong, but if their picture shows Skylink, just be like, okay. You know,
but the first thing that the public has to do, Nick,
ridicule,
is look up.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
don't be like that movie. Don't look up.
Yeah.
Watch that movie and do the opposite.
Almost everyone is attached to that phone right now, Nick, and they're looking down all the time.
I wish I was looking at my phone when I saw those things, and then I could have snapped a picture. I really regret that. I do, because if I showed it to you, you'd be really shocked what we were seeing.
But to a degree, I'm glad that you didn't, and it was genuine. And the reason for that is it goes back to all the times that we go, how does someone not take a photo of that?
Yeah, not a single one of us did. There was a lot of us out there. All of us with phones, every single one.
Just goes to show it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, we can't even enter our work building without our phones, so we all had them.
That's the thing. Sometimes it's easy to not think of that. But what says you at home? What do you think you got going on? Do you think that this is aliens? Do you think it's little gray men, little green men? Do you think it's our own countries? And if so, then why is it in so many different countries? Do you think it's other countries? I'm going to tell you.
Why now?
I'm going to tell you, if you're saying it's not little green men, you're wrong. But tell me in the comment down below why you think that it's not.
Yeah. Why do you think we're wrong?
Yeah. Why do you think we're wrong for? We got a podcast. If you don't believe us, get your own doggone podcast.
Yeah. Have we ever steered you wrong before?
Exactly. But hopefully y'all enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. I mean, if you made it an hour and 22 minutes, you listened to the entire thing, obviously you found something of value. That's why you stuck along. So hit the subscribe button. If you think you're subscribed, double check, because a lot of times when you think you're subscribed, you're really not.
Right.
So definitely double check that. Next week, we're going to be doing week 3 of what will probably wrap up the entire drone section. And then we're going to be moving back to our favorite things that we talk about, which is unsolved mysteries. So if you came for the drones, stick around for the other stuff too. You might be impressed with what we come up with.
Absolutely.
You got anything else for the people out there, Nick?
No, other than that, for once, I'm happy we're wrapping up because I've been fighting a sneeze for 10 minutes.
That's fair. Well, until we see you on the next podcast, goodbye.
Achoo. Goodbye. Just kidding.